in its essence is not a something. It is a somebody. His name is Jesus Christ. When truth is called a lie, the lights go out, darkness falls, and indeed, if your light is darkness, how very deep will the darkness be? All the words in this book can be compressed into one word, the eternal word, Jesus the Christ. A human being has a dignity that is tremendous. You know, every human being, from the first moment of conception, we've been talking just about Christians. Now we're talking about any human being, baptized or not. Because created in the image and likeness of God, every human being has a dignity beyond imagination. The dignity of the human person is rooted in his very creation in the image and likeness of God. Thus you can see the horrible outrage that has been perpetrated against God himself when any person or class of persons is persecuted or discriminated against. If it's black people or Asian people or white people or any group, when they're attacked, persecuted, discriminated against, it's a horror. I shudder to think about the outrage of racial discrimination or any other kind of discrimination. It's an outrage because every single human being, black, white, yellow, doesn't matter, they're all equal in dignity. Why? Because every single one of them is created in the image and likeness of God. Everyone, from the first moment of conception. Everyone with inalienable rights, the right to life at the head of the list. And so, the dignity of the human person. We're called to beatitude, to happiness in God. We have a supernatural end. Our end is not merely natural. Most people in the world live as though they just had a natural end. Hey, we live our life, we try to be successful, we die, that's it. No, it's not. That's the beginning. We live forever. We go on forever. My brothers and sisters, if every Catholic in the world interiorized that truth and lived that truth with intensity, the world would be a very different place. Because we wouldn't merely be living for today, we'd be living forever. And we'd be acting today as though there is a forever. And so we have to make that reality present. It is essential to a human being to freely direct himself to the fulfillment of his end, which is supernatural. My brothers and sisters, if we're not concerned about our supernatural end, we're wasting our time. If you and I aren't concerned about not only getting to heaven, but being saints, God help us. If we are so wrapped up in making money and acquiring prestige and power or whatever else makes people tick these days, how foolish, how very foolish. Because the day's going to come. You know, I've helped quite a few people die, and it's an enlightening experience. I don't know if you have been around death very much. There's a saying, there aren't any atheists in foxholes. And I'll tell you something, there aren't. At least I've not run into very many of them. There aren't that many out-and-out atheists when they get right down to facing death. You know, it's easy to be a wise guy and say you don't need God, and I didn't have him all this time, and I don't want him now. Oh yeah, you talk that you know what, until you get to the end. You get to the end, and you're facing death. Not too many people talk that way. I've probably seen a lot more people than most of you have die, unless you're a doctor or a nurse. But they all seem to come around, one way or another. They might not want to admit it. I've had some because of pride. They wouldn't admit it in front of their family. But when I was alone with them, say, okay, Father. You want to hear my confession? Oh, you bet I do. Or just quite simply, they acknowledge I am a sinner. The great Archbishop Fulton Sheen told a story once of a man who had lived a terrible life, and he was dying from cancer. I think Bishop Sheen was a priest then, and he went to see the man, and the man just threw him out. He laid eyes on him, and he was enraged. And he just threw him right out. I don't want anything to do with religion. I hate the Catholic Church. I hate priests. Get out. Well, Bishop Sheen went back the next day, and the man threw him out and threw him out, and the family couldn't do anything with him. And finally, he went in and he said, well, look, won't you just say a prayer? And he tried everything. Nothing worked. He was getting closer and closer to death. He was so weak. And it looked like he was going to die that night. And the bishop went up to him and he said, well, look, just turn to the Lord and say, Lord, have mercy on me. Jesus, I love you. He whispered that in his ear, and he left. And he told the nurse, if anything happens, call me. I'll come any time, any hour of the day or night. No one called. He went back that morning, and the nurse said, an amazing thing happened. I was there in the middle of the night, and the man, he was too weak to talk. He seemed to be whispering. And I went up to see if I could hear what he was saying. Jesus, I love you. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy on me. It's never too late. Never too late. And so we have to strive for our supernatural end. I assure you that man will see God face to face. He's already seen him. Maybe he has to spend time in purgatory. I don't know. The point is he repented. Never too late. Our supernatural end, union with God. It's all that matters. That's what we have to strive for. We're made in God's image. We're endowed with an immortal soul. We take pretty good care of our physical body. Most of us eat regularly. Nowadays, we're more aware of good nutrition. We try to eat a better diet. Get some exercise, maybe. Get enough rest. We take pretty good care of this body because this body has to carry us. It has to work. What about your soul? Sometimes people will say to me, oh, Father, I'm a good man. Or often wives will say, oh, my husband's a good man. He doesn't like to go to church, though. Heard that before? And I'll say, well, I'm sure he is a naturally good man. But let me tell you something. Being a good old boy isn't good enough to get you into heaven. Being good merely naturally is not enough to achieve a supernatural end. It requires supernatural means to achieve a supernatural end. That means sanctifying grace, and it comes to us through the sacraments, through prayer, through acts of virtue, through living the life of Christ. And so, yes, natural goodness, good. Grace builds on nature, yes. But don't stop short with nature. Allow your nature to be fulfilled. The man who follows Jesus Christ, the perfect man, himself becomes more of a man. Jesus is perfectly human, and if you follow him, you will become more human. That's why in our culture, as we've de-Christianized society, we have dehumanized society. As we have taken God out of the schools and every place else, what's happened? Man has become crass, hard, and so we can tolerate all kinds of inhumane things, like abortion, euthanasia, suicide, growing numbers, violence. As we de-Christianize, we dehumanize, for Jesus Christ is the one who is fully human. His humanity is perfect, not impoverished, not diminished, not distorted because of sin, but perfect, perfect. And so as we follow him and live his life, we become perfected, not only in our Christianity, but in our humanity as well. We know that man is made in the image and likeness of God because his heart, his will, is ordained towards the good and his mind towards that which is true. Until our mind rests in the truth, until our will rests in the good, we can't rest at all. St. Augustine once said, "Our hearts are restless, O Lord, until they rest in you." The mind, which is a great gift, the intellect, with 1,000 and a million questions, always questioning, why this, why that, how should it be like this? You can't rest until your mind rests in God. The mind is made for truth, and that is why courses like this are very successful, because the people want the truth, because the truth does something for you. It sets you free, yes, but your mind gravitates to truth. Your mind is not at ease when it's tossed and turned by 1,000 lies and contradictions. But then, when you set eyes on truth, oh, the peace of it. I get letters from people all the time. I had one recently where someone thanked me, and she said that the truth, this catechism, this teaching is like balm on the soul. It's like sweet ointment on the soul. It gives me peace. It helps me so much. That's what the truth does for the human mind. And the good, well, that's what our heart needs to rest in. The truth and goodness, those are names for God. God is truth. God is goodness. And so we need to gravitate towards God in order to fully actualize our human potential. And so we are made in God's image and likeness, and therein is our dignity as human persons. And as we live out our Christianity, becoming more and more like Jesus, we become more human. We fully actualize our human potential. Once I was at a theological symposium in Spain, and a cardinal, archbishop of a major diocese, I believe it was Cologne, was present. And the closing words of his talk were quite startling. The last words he spoke were, "Only God is fully human." Rather a startling statement. You have to think about it for a while. But who created humanity? God created humanity. Who knows more about humanity than anything? God, the author of humanity. What happened to humanity? Sin. What did sin do to humanity? Sin distorted it, impoverished it, diminished it, fractured it. Does Jesus have sin? No. Is Jesus God? Yes. Is Jesus also true man? Yes. Only God is fully human. And so God understands what it means to be fully human. And as we follow Jesus Christ, who's perfectly human, we ourselves are perfected in our humanity. As we Christianize our society, we humanize it. Now that doesn't mean a false Christianity. It means real Christianity. And so we do a great service to the world by being truly Christian. The Beatitudes are the heart of the preaching of Jesus. There are 9 of them, generally speaking. I could substitute the word happy for blessed. Blessed, happy are the poor in spirit. You know, we all want to be happy. Sometimes I ask people, why are you committing that sin? Because it feels good. Because I like it. Sometimes they say that. I want to be happy. How come what are you getting high on cocaine for? It makes me feel good. For a while. I want to be happy. Yes, Everyone wants to be happy. The problem is that our concept of what will make us happy is very distorted. Our perception is distorted because of sin. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Happy are the poor in spirit. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed, happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now the world says just the opposite. Happy are the rich. Happy are those who don't mourn. The paradox. Jesus says, happy are the poor in spirit. Are you attached to the stock market? Brother, when it crashes, you will too. Happy are they who mourn. Aren't Christians supposed to be joyful? Yes, they are. But should we mourn because of the evil in the world? Yes. Should we mourn because of the children who are born into a world which is so difficult? We should mourn over that. Not just mourn, but do something about it as well. If we are mourning and then acting out of that sorrow to do something to change it, blessed are we. Jesus mourned in the garden. Jesus mourned over his friend Lazarus. Jesus mourned over Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you slew the prophets, killed the Holy One. How many times I would gather you as a mother hen her chicks, but you would not. Jesus mourned. We mourn over the evil in the world, but then we do something about it. Happy or blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the world. Now, what does the world say? Don't be meek, assert yourself. Grab hold of your own rights. It's not what the gospel says. It says, blessed are the meek, not the warlike, not the pushy, not the arrogant. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Happy are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Don't ever dare, my friends, to be unmerciful to anyone. I do not care if that person is the worst rapist, murderer in the world. I don't care if they're Hitler, Stalin, and everybody else evil rolled into one. Don't you dare hold back mercy from them for any reason, and dare ask God for mercy for your sins. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Christianity isn't for wimps. In plain English, it takes guts to be a Christian. Not easy to forgive. Blessed are those who are merciful. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. What a great thing, purity. We need a lot more of it in the world. Blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called sons of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed, happy are you. I always like this one. Happy are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven will be great. Wow, that's the exact opposite of what the world teaches us. That's Christianity. That's what we need to embrace. We need to meditate on it, think about it, and pray for the grace to be able to live it faithfully. Man is created free. Freedom is a great thing. In the next hour, I'm going to be talking primarily about 3 words. Very important words. I told you before that we have a veritable attack on words today. The proper definition and understanding of terms is important. The 3 words I'm going to talk to you the rest of the afternoon about are freedom, conscience, and truth. Words which are absolutely related, indispensably related. There is no authentic human freedom without the truth. You cannot have a real conscience, a well-formed conscience, unless it is formed to the objective norm of truth. And unless you've entered into the truth, you can't be free. For Jesus said, if you abide in my word, if you obey my commandments, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And so the relationship between freedom, conscience, and truth. Number 1731 of the Catechism teaches us that freedom is the power rooted in reason and will to act or not to act, to do this or that, and so to perform deliberate actions on one's own responsibility. By free will, one shapes one's own life. Human freedom is a force for growth and maturity in truth and goodness. It attains its perfection when directed toward God, our beatitude or happiness. There are many erroneous notions of freedom today. The most common is that freedom is the ability to do what we want to do. If you'd ask most people, what's freedom? Well, being able to do what I want to do. You see, that's the normal presupposition that underlies most people's perception of freedom. That is not freedom. That is a fallacious, erroneous understanding of what human freedom is. And it's very easy to prove. If freedom is the ability to do whatever you want to do, hey, we live in a free country, right? Right. It's great to be in a free country. Absolutely. Well, since we're in a free country, now let's say somebody back there doesn't like this stuff I've been saying this afternoon and decides that he will take out his mini howitzer and fire a couple rounds at me up here, hoping that I'd shut up. Well, after all, it's a free country, isn't it? Can't you do what you want to do? No. Freedom has limits, right? Right. Once again, go back to the beginning. Back to the book of Genesis. What happened? God had created everything. He had proclaimed it to be good, very good. Then he creates man, Adam and Eve, male and female. He created them. And what does he say to them? He says, you may eat of all of the trees in the garden. Human freedom is very broad. But it is of the tree in the center of the garden that you may not eat of, or even touch it, lest you die. Human freedom has limits. Very broad, but with certain limits. Human freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want to do. No, human freedom is the ability to do what we ought to do. What should we do, ideally? The highest and best thing. What's that? To know God, to love God, to serve God. There isn't anything greater than that. Can you do that if you're not free? Oh no. That reading from the Gospel of John that I read to you, Jesus said that the man who sins becomes the slave to sin. Now there's the key to freedom right there. In order to be free, in order to be able to do what we ought to do, getting rid of sin is the key. And so freedom is the ability to do what we should do as human persons. And what should we do as human persons? What we should do is know, love, and serve God with a whole heart, mind, and strength. And we ought to love our neighbor as ourselves. And you can't do it unless you're free. Free. With the glorious freedom of the children of God. And so therein is a definition of freedom. St. Augustine laid that definition down 1,500 years ago. He was having a struggle with a certain heretic bishop, a Pelagian heretic bishop. Julian of Aeclanum was his name. And Julian was teaching that freedom is the ability to choose from between opposites, good, evil. That's freedom, to be able to choose good or evil. And Augustine's response was, that is not freedom. For if freedom is the ability to choose between good and evil, then God is not free. or God cannot choose evil. And that is how you worship God, by stripping him of his freedom. Freedom is not the ability to choose good or evil. Freedom is the ability to choose the good. No one has the right to choose evil. Do we have the physical ability to choose evil? Oh, yes, absolutely. I could go up on the roof and jump off, right? I'm free to do that physically. Commit suicide? I could do that. Am I morally free to do that? No, absolutely not. I am not morally free to do that. Freedom means being liberated. Who liberated us? Jesus came to set the captives free. And so human freedom means being able to know, love, and serve God with our whole heart, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. I need to be very free to live out my human and Christian potential. If I am enslaved to sin, I'm not free. I'm shackled. And Jesus didn't come to keep us slaves. He came to set us free. And so the more one does what is good, the more one is freed. It's true that as long as freedom hasn't bound itself definitively to the ultimate good, which is God, there is the possibility of choosing between good and evil. We can do it, certainly. We do it all the time. Sometimes we don't get it right. We can grow in perfection, or we can fall into sin. We choose. But if you want to be free, not a slave, then choose the good. Choose the true, and you'll be free. And then you'll know what freedom really means. And the more we do what is good and true, the more free we become. Freedom makes us responsible for our actions. But our freedom has something to do with sin. Our freedom is impaired and impoverished because of sin. Our freedom is limited and fallible. In fact, man failed. He freely sinned. By refusing God's plan of love, man deceived himself and became a slave to sin. The first alienation from God engendered a multitude of others, the Catechism teaches us. And from its outset, human history attests to the wretchedness and oppression born of the human heart in consequence not of freedom, but of the abuse of freedom. God said to Adam and Eve, "You may eat of all the trees in the garden." Freedom is very broad. "But you may not eat of the tree in the center of the garden or even touch it, lest you die." What happened? The abuse of freedom led to the slavery of sin. And so we strive to be free. There are many threats to freedom, and we're going to speak about the threats to freedom. We're going to speak about liberation and salvation when we come back. But where we're heading now in the next hour is this whole concept of freedom as it relates to truth and the formation of conscience. Very, very important, these three principles. We have a very short period of time, but I want you to pay real close attention, especially in this next hour, because we're going to talk about the formation of conscience. Formation of conscience to the objective norm of truth. And that will keep you free so that you can do everything that's good and right before God. To continue with freedom and then going right into the morality of human acts, we're getting right into morality now with this hour. Freedom makes a human being a moral subject. When he acts deliberately, this is number 1749 in the Catechism, when he acts deliberately, man is, so to speak, the father of his acts. Human acts, that is, acts that are freely chosen in consequence of a judgment of conscience, can be morally evaluated. They are either good or evil. The sources of morality, then. In order to evaluate human acts to see if they are morally good or evil, well, the morality of human acts depends on three essential things. Now, this part of the teaching, we're entered into moral theology here. It's not that simple. And so if you get a little bit behind or confused, don't be too concerned about that. Now, as always, you've got to read the material and read it prayerfully and read it more than once. You know, every once in a while somebody tells me, "Oh, Father, I read the material, but I just can't understand it." And I'll say, "Well, how many times did you read it?" "Well, only once." Listen, I read this stuff, and I've been through it for years and years and years, and I read it many times over. You know how long it takes me for one day, this one day, these 4 hours? It takes me 40 to 50 hours of solid preparation for 4 hours of teaching. So don't feel bad if reading it once you don't quite get it all and it doesn't seem to sink in. Don't feel badly about that. That's normal. Read it again. Say a prayer to the Holy Spirit and read it again. And then if you just can't get it, if you can ask questions of someone who can help you, or if you can get a question in to us at the end, we'll try to clarify it. But the morality of human acts depends on three things: the object chosen, the end in view or the intention, and the circumstances of the action, the circumstances that surround it. The object chosen is a good towards which the will deliberately directs itself. It is what we call the matter of a human act. It's the thing in itself. The object chosen morally specifies the act of the will insofar as reason recognizes and judges it to be or not to be in conformity with the true good. For instance, someone thinks that, doing some, well, what could we give for an example? Some immoral thing. They think, "Oh, that's going to make me feel good, I'm going to do that." The thing in itself, watching a bad movie, okay, an immoral movie, the thing in itself, that's the object. The end in view or the intention, you know, why I'm doing that, what's my intention. And then the circumstances of the action, they all have to do with the determination of the morality of that act. All three of those are important. Now, the object, the thing in itself, that's the most important constituent factor. That's the thing in itself, okay? Now, our intention can, for better or for worse, have an impact on that object. And then the circumstances surrounding it, that can also have an impact. A good intention, for example, that of helping one's neighbor, does not make behavior that is intrinsically disordered, such as lying or calumny, good or just. One time a person said, "But I wanted to help my friend, and so I paid for her to have the abortion because she was scared and this and that." I think the person actually meant well. They weren't trying to do evil. But they thought, well, my intention, though, my intention is good. My intention is to help. My intention isn't to do evil. So that then makes it good. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, no, it doesn't. The object itself, if it is intrinsically evil, never justifies the act or the intention. Even if it's a good intention, you can't justify an intrinsically evil act, no matter how well-intentioned you are. "But I'm sincere." You can be just as sincerely wrong as you are right. And so intention has a bearing on it. But if the thing is disordered in itself, if it's intrinsically evil, no amount of good intention can change that. The end does not justify the means. I want my friend to be happy. How can I make her happy? Well, I'll pay for the abortion. No. The end, the happiness of my friend, does not justify an evil means. That's a basic moral precept. You can never do evil, imagining that good will come out of it. The circumstances, including the consequences of the action, are secondary elements of a moral act. They contribute to increasing or diminishing the moral goodness or evil of human acts. For instance, the amount of money stolen in a theft and who we steal from. Obviously, stealing $10 is bad no matter who you steal it from, but if you steal it from a poor widow who only has $10 as opposed to from some big bank, it's worse taking it from the person who suffers more. Now, the thing in itself is objectively bad, no matter who you take it from. But the circumstances can have an effect on the subjective guilt, okay? So, we have three things. The object, that's the thing in itself. That's the action in itself. And then we have the intention. You know, what's my intention in doing this particular act? And then the circumstances surrounding that particular activity. And they all have a bearing on the morality, good or evil, of a human act. A morally good act requires the goodness of the object, of the end, and of the circumstances together. An evil end corrupts the action, even if the object is itself good, such as praying and fasting. That's the object. Praying and fasting is good. That's a very good thing in itself. But if we're praying and fasting in order to show off, that's not so good. An evil end corrupts the action. And so you see how that intention or end, my intention is that everybody thinks I'm a saint. And so I pray and fast, just like Jesus talked about the Pharisees, how they would fast or let everybody know how holy they are. Well, why are they doing it? To be seen by men, not to be seen by God. And so that evil intention corrupts even a good action. The object of the choice can by itself vitiate an act in its entirety. There are some concrete acts, such as a number of things. It gives the example of fornication. Some acts that are always wrong to choose because choosing them entails a disorder of the will. That is a moral evil. There are certain concrete acts which are what we say intrinsically evil. The things in themselves, regardless of intention, regardless of circumstances, are intrinsically evil. The things in themselves are evil, always. Taking the life of the innocent, that's evil. If you directly take the life of abortion, an innocent person, if you directly take the life of an innocent person, that's always evil, regardless of the circumstances. Now, if it's an indirect result of something, that's quite another matter. Sometimes a procedure is performed, trying to save a mother's life, and an unwanted effect of that is that the baby dies. Now, that's not direct abortion. Yes, an abortion takes place indirectly, but it's not willed. And that's quite a different thing. In trying to, you're not trying to kill a baby, you're trying to save a mother's life. So you see that you have to take all of that into consideration in evaluating moral acts. Now, I'm trying to teach you moral theology in an afternoon. You can't do it. Obviously, that can't be done. But we're just trying to at least give you some sense, some taste for this, so you'll pursue it then on your own, so you'll read more on your own, and so you'll come back and finish this course, and then if there's one next year, take that one too, because you build on the foundation that you have. The Catechism talks about the morality of the passions. If you've read any spiritual theology or moral theology, you've heard the word the passions. I can substitute for that word and help you. I can give you a synonym. The emotions, the feelings. Okay, the feelings. The morality of feelings, the morality of emotions, the morality of passions. The Catechism speaks about that, beginning with number 1763. Passions, or Feelings are emotions or movements of the sensitive appetite that incline us to act or not to act in regard to something felt or imagined to be good or evil. The passions are natural components of the human psyche. They form the passageway and ensure the connection between the life of the senses and the life of the mind. Now, the feelings, the passions, the emotions are important. They are important. But do not think that they are all important. A lot of times people are they're even trained or counseled to just go by their feelings. That's a terrible mistake. If you just go by your feelings, certainly feelings are important and should be taken into account. But let me tell you what happens to people who operate only on the sentient level, on the level of sense perception, emotion, feelings, the passions. They're up and down like a yo-yo. One day they're up, the next day they're down. They're tortured. The human person has to operate more than anything on the level of intellect and will. If I went by feelings, half of the time you might show up and I might not. Or half the time I might show up and you might not, right? There are plenty of days where you probably don't feel like coming down here and spending a whole day having to listen to me, but you're not governed only by your feelings. You think. You say, well, no, it's good for me to do this. I want to grow in my faith, and even though I don't feel like doing it, it's hot out, or I have 1,001 things to do, and I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to do it. You make a decision. Love is a decision. And so that act of the will moves you in the right direction. And so, yes, our feelings are very important, but do not be governed only by feelings. Keep your feelings under control. Allow your mind, your intellect, to control your feelings. Then you won't fall apart. You know, people that are run by their passions or emotions are that's like a runaway horse. You ever been on a horse that took off, wasn't under control? I have been a couple of times. I was on a cattle drive in Wyoming once, and this old horse, I forget what his name was. He had an interesting name, though. Battle Axe or something. And, and he took off. And a horse will get the bit, you know, he'll bite on it, and he'll take off. And boy, it's really hard if you don't know about horses to get them back under control. The passions, the emotions, when they're not under control of your mind, your intellect and your will, kind of like a runaway horse. Man, look out, because you're out of control. You're just going to, and I don't care what the passion is, lust, depression, anxiety, you name it, out of control. If your mind doesn't bring it back into order. See, the passions have to be under the control of reason. And then the passions can help us. They can be used as positive kind of motivators. They can push us in the right direction. In themselves, passions or feelings are neither good nor evil. They are morally qualified only to the extent that they effectively engage reason and will. Passions are said to be voluntary either because they are commanded by the will or because the will does not place obstacles in their way. And once again, it belongs to the perfection of the moral or human good that the passions be governed by reason. Look, we are intelligent beings, rational creatures. If our feelings run rampant, if we go only by emotion, we're out of control and we torture ourselves and everybody else around us. Now, this can happen in families, it can happen in parishes, it happens every place. People are going by their feelings too much. Often, someone will say to me, well, I feel that the church should change its teaching on whatever. Well, I respect everybody's right to their opinion. Everyone has a perfect right to an opinion. But if you go merely by your feelings or your opinions, pretty soon, not reason, but lack thereof is going to control things. You know, I may feel that it would be good, I don't feel this way, but let's say I had lost my mind somehow, and I would feel that every priest should be entitled to 9 wives. After all, we're supposed to be experts on marriage, right? Well, we're supposed to counsel other people, and as people sometimes say, now how could you know anything about marriage? You've never been married, and therefore I think I will petition the Pope that he should allow each priest to have 9 wives. And therefore we will learn very quickly all about marriage, we will become experts, and we will be able to help the whole world. Now, no matter how much I feel, for whatever reason, that might be a good idea, it's not a good idea. How come? Well, number one, it's not in accord with reason. It's not in accord with church teaching. It's not in accord with the natural law. It's not in accord with the divine law. So no matter how much I feel that should be the way it is, my mind, which has to control my feelings and govern my feelings and direct my feelings, my mind tells me that's just not the way it ought to be. And then my will, following the light of reason, puts me on the right path. Intellect and will have to be in the driver's seat. Don't put passion in the driver's seat. Don't let feelings run rampant, because they'll take you on one heck of a ride. Moral perfection consists in man's being moved to the good, not by his will alone, but also by his sensitive appetite, passion, feeling, emotion, as in the words of the psalm, my heart and flesh sing for joy to the living God. So our whole being should be involved in our perfection. Yes, our feelings are involved, certainly, they're important, but the feelings should be well ordered. They should be governed by rationality, by reason, and by will. And so then the whole human person, integrated, operating as a unit, a totality, we engage everything to praise and serve God. And so the passions can be used for good or for evil. The passions, feelings, emotions in themselves aren't good or evil. It depends on what we do with them. You know, sometimes we become angry. St. Peter says, if you are angry, let it be without sin. Just because you become angry doesn't mean you've committed a sin yet. Just how you handle it. And so the passions in themselves have to be governed and controlled by intellect and will.